Think about who you were maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah?
You probably remember the city you lived in, right? You remember the job you had.
Sure.
You can probably even remember your passwords from back then. But can you remember what it actually felt like to believe your life could be entirely different?
Oof, that's a tough one.
Right. Today, we are looking at this incredibly deep kind of medical and philosophical anomaly. We're asking why you haven't forgotten the facts of your past, but you may have entirely forgotten your own possibilities. Welcome to the deep dive.
It's just a profound, really specific type of forgetting that we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Because, we are so conditioned to think of memory loss as a structural decay,
Hmm.
like a leaking bucket where vocabulary words and where you put your car keys just sort of drip out over time.
Right, just natural aging.
Exactly.
Right.
But the source text we are diving into today argues that the most devastating form of amnesia has absolutely nothing to do with time.
Or natural decay.
Right. Nothing at all.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the source material makes a really critical distinction right out of the gate.
It really does.
There is the natural decay of neural pathways, and then there is a forgetting that follows a wound.
Yes.
A forgetting that follows a surrender, basically.
Mm-hmm.
The text describes the scenario where a memory doesn't fade away because it's too old.
Mm-hmm.
It vanishes because the self that once held that memory no longer believes it has the right to exist.
Right. So we are talking about losing the memories of actual states of being.
What do you mean by that? States of being?
Like what it actually felt like to want something fully, without an internal sensor immediately shutting it down.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
What it felt like to move toward a goal without apologizing for it, or to occupy an imagined future as though it were a tangible, real place.
Mm-hmm.
People experience this constantly. They will say things like, you hear it all the time, I just can't remember who I used to be.
And the paradox is they know the biographical details.
Oh, absolutely.
They know who they dated, what they studied in college. The facts are there.
The facts are totally intact.
But they cannot feel their way back into the person who existed before they contracted themselves, before they shrunk down to fit their current life.
Exactly.
The architecture of the self that held those really expansive feelings just isn't there anymore.
What's fascinating here is the neuroscience backing this up.
Yeah, I love this part.
It's wild.
Yeah.
Memory and imagination don't just share some, poetic or metaphorical connection.
Right.
They share the exact same neurological substrate in the brain, which is centered primarily in the hippocampus.
Okay, the hippocampus.
Yeah. And, we tend to operate under the assumption that memory is a filing cabinet.
Like you open a drawer.
You open a drawer, you pull out a static file labeled summer of 2015, and you just read it.
Right, like playing back a video recording on your phone.
But that is not how the brain works at all.
Mm.
Remembering is this incredibly strenuous act of reconstruction in real time.
Real-time reconstruction.
Yes. Your brain essentially holds onto a few index cards, maybe a smell, a burst of color, a spike of adrenaline.
Just fragments.
Just fragments. And when you try to remember an event, the hippocampus scrambles to build a movie set out of those index cards. It pulls in visual data, auditory data, the emotional context.
That sounds exhausting for the brain.
It is. And here is the kicker. The hippocampus, the structure doing all this heavy lifting to reconstruct the past, is the exact same structure that constructs hypothetical futures.
Wait, really? The exact same one?
The exact same one. It uses the very same puzzle pieces to build what might happen as it does to remember what did happen.
So, if I can throw an analogy at this.
Please do.
It's like trying to open an old computer file. Let's say you have this highly complex 3D rendering file from a project you built, 5 years ago.
Okay, I'm with you.
The data, like the raw memory itself, is physically sitting on your hard drive.
Right.
But if you have uninstalled the software program that originally created it, you cannot render the image. You double-click the file and you just get an error message. The data is totally intact. But without the software, which in this case is the human imagination, you can't bring it to life on the screen.
That analogy holds up neurologically perfectly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the imagination is the rendering engine.
The rendering engine, I like that.
It requires the capacity to inhabit what is not presently in front of you.
Yeah.
That is the exact same cognitive muscle required to inhabit a memory of a time when you felt completely alive.
Wow.
And the implication for anyone listening is immense.
How so?
Well, if your imaginative faculty is impaired by, say, chronic stress, by trauma or by sustained invalidation.
The daily grind, essentially.
Right. If that happens, your ability to remember what was most alive inside of you is also completely blocked.
Because the bridge between then and now has been compromised. Like the software is corrupted.
Yeah, exactly. When we experience chronic stress, the body is flooded with cortisol.
The stress hormone.
Right. And sustained high levels of cortisol literally shrink the hippocampus.
Wait, physically shrinks.
Physically shrinks. Your brain redirects all its energy to immediate survival.
Wow.
I mean, you aren't building complex hypothetical futures when you are running from a predator.
That makes sense.
Or, in modern terms, when you're stressed about making payroll or surviving a toxic work environment.
Yeah, you're just trying to get through the day.
Exactly. The rendering engine is forcibly shut down to conserve energy.
But this feels like a trap, doesn't it?
It is trapped.
If my software is gone and my brain has physically pruned back its ability to imagine these expansive futures, why aren't we sounding the alarm?
Right.
The source text gives an answer that is honestly chilling because it doesn't feel like a loss.
No, it doesn't.
It masquerades as something else entirely.
It disguises itself perfectly.
Mm.
The text points out how this suppressed imagination looks from the inside.
Right.
It does not present as a tragedy or a crisis. It presents as maturity.
Ouch.
Yeah. It presents as being grounded, as pragmatism.
Wow. Think about a time recently where you had a sudden, wild idea, maybe moving to a new city or completely shifting your career path.
I think we all had those moments.
Right. But almost instantly, this inner voice lists 10 airtight, completely logical reasons why it is financially irresponsible and completely foolish.
And that voice feels incredibly realistic.
It really does. It feels like you've finally grown up and gotten a clear-eyed view of how the world actually works.
Mm-hmm.
The inner censor, which, probably started as an external voice.
Like a critical parent.
Exactly. A critical parent or a rigid school system or just the compounded weight of past failures, that voice becomes so thoroughly internalized that it just feels like reality.
The desires just drift out of range. Until, as the text notes, the habit of not reaching has become its own reality.
But wait, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Sure.
I mean, isn't it necessary to grow up?
Well, yes.
We can't all be astronauts or rock stars, right? We have mortgages.
Yeah.
We have dependents. Where is the line between healthy pragmatism, like operating responsibly in the real world, and this tragic forgetting we're talking about?
If you connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look at how ancient traditions understood the human mind to answer that.
Okay.
Our modern culture treats imagination as synonymous with daydreaming.
Like a frivolous escape.
Exactly, a frivolous escape from the real world. But across multiple ancient lineages, that wasn't the case at all.
How did they see it?
Whether we look at the Latin imaginatio, the Arabic khayal, or the Sanskrit kalpana,
Okay.
these cultures did not see imagination as a naive retreat. They understood it as a higher faculty.
A completely different mode of perception.
Right. Take the Sufi concept of khayal, for instance.
Okay, Kyle.
It wasn't considered a fake world inside your head. It was seen as an actual intermediary realm of reality.
An intermediary realm.
Yes, a bridge between the invisible world of pure potential and the visible world of physical matter.
Oh, wow.
And the imagination was the required organ of perception to interact with that realm. It was literally the drafting board of reality.
So it wasn't just making things up.
Not at all.
Yeah.
So, to address the pushback about pragmatism.
Yeah, because I still have a mortgage.
Right. True pragmatism is navigating the physical world responsibly. But what the text warns against is giving up your identity as a creator of what could be.
The text actually uses a very heavy phrase for this specific loss.
It does.
It calls it a metaphysical amputation.
Which is a brilliant way to frame it.
It is so intense. Metaphysical amputation.
Because you aren't just forgetting your specific dreams,
Right.
You are losing the fundamental experience of being a creative entity.
Yeah.
You lose the felt sense that you participate in the ongoing generation of reality. And instead, you reduce yourself to an object that merely reacts to the reality someone else handed you.
A metaphysical amputation. It is the severing of the self from its own creative ground.
That's exactly it.
And because it happens incrementally, day by day, compromise by compromise, you don't even know you're bleeding out.
No, you don't.
You just think you're being practical.
Yeah.
So if we realize we've been confusing a metaphysical amputation with just being an adult, how the hell are we supposed to reverse the process?
Well, the text is very clear. that you do not start by trying to aggressively force memories.
You don't just sit down and try to remember.
No, you don't sit down with a journal and demand that your brain remember your lost passion. That doesn't work.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the text suggests starting with something incredibly subtle.
Very subtle.
It calls it a small tolerance for imagination.
A willingness to allow a thought about what is possible to simply finish itself.
Finish itself. I love that.
Think about that mental exercise of moving to a new city we mentioned earlier.
Right.
Creating a small tolerance for imagination means sitting with the idea of that move without instantly checking housing prices and getting depressed.
Just letting the idea breathe.
Yes. You create a gap, just a breath, where you hold a moment with enough internal safety that your future-facing faculty can flicker on without being immediately blown out by the inner critic.
And in that gap, you don't instantly get a flood of childhood memories back, right?
No, not at all.
The text says what you find is resonance.
Resonance.
It's a faint signal from a frequency that was never actually lost, just blocked.
Resonance is a great word because it points to a physical reality.
Like in the body.
Yeah. What does it actually feel like, somatically, to experience resonance?
I don't know. How would you describe it?
It's not just an intellectual aha moment.
Yeah.
It's that sudden dropping sensation in your gut.
Oh, yeah.
It's a quickened pulse. It's an unclenching of the jaw when a certain idea crosses your mind.
I know exactly what you mean.
You follow that physical resonance rather than performing doubt about it or explaining it away.
But the source material also brings in a vital external component here.
Yes, this is huge.
It argues that we can't always do this in a vacuum. It emphasizes why our environments, and specifically the people we surround ourselves with, matter so deeply.
Right.
It claims that a single moment of being truly recognized by someone else can do what years of solo effort cannot.
This is a crucial point about human neurobiology.
How does that work neurologically?
Well, we are profoundly social creatures, and our nervous systems are designed to co-regulate.
Co-regulate, meaning we sync up with each other.
Exactly. When you are in your most diminished, stressed out state, your imaginative software is offline.
Right, the rendering engine is off.
But when another person looks at you and genuinely imagines the best, most realized version of you, it has a disproportionate effect on what you can remember about yourself.
It's like they look past the stress and validate the possibility.
Because that external recognition does something critical psychologically, it confirms that the not yet real has reality.
Wow.
When someone else sees your potential and reflects it back to you, it validates that higher faculty. It turns the rendering engine back on.
That's incredible.
The text notes that in the safety of that external confirmation, real memory, what it calls cellular memory, the deep longing that lives in the body, begins to stir.
It's almost as if they lend you their software until yours finishes reinstalling.
That is a perfect way to put it.
Like, if your rendering engine is broken, a mentor or a deeply empathetic friend or a partner essentially runs the file through their imagination. They show you the rendered image of who you could be, and your brain says, oh, right, I remember how to do that.
You borrow their imaginative faculty to jumpstart your own?
But, you know, if a single moment of being seen by another person can spark that resonance, that implies our ancestors who lived in highly interdependent communal settings might not have suffered from this amputation the way we do in our hyper-individualized modern world.
Oh, absolutely. They lived very differently.
So how did ancient traditions ensure this spark didn't just flicker out the second someone was alone again?
They didn't leave it to chance.
They had systems for it.
Yes. They developed highly specific communal technologies to cultivate and sustain this imagination.
And we aren't talking about digital technology.
No. We're talking about practices engineered to alter states of consciousness. Ritual, ceremony, movement. And music is a huge one highlighted in the text.
Let's break down why music works as a technology for this.
Sure.
Because it bypasses conceptual processing entirely.
It really does.
When you hear a complex chord progression or a driving rhythm, you don't have to think about it to feel its effect.
Right, you just feel it.
A slow drum beat can physically entrain your heart rate, slowing it down. It goes straight past the prefrontal cortex where that inner critic lives.
That logical voice we talked about.
Exactly. And it moves directly through the motor cortex and the emotional centers of the brain. It interrupts that habitual, tense, contracted posture we all walk around with.
It forces open those somatic channels we were talking about earlier. Before your conscious mind can say, oh, I shouldn't feel hopeful because the economy is bad, Your nervous system has already responded to the music.
Your breathing has already deepened.
Exactly.
Mm.
But the text emphasizes one ultimate technology above all the others.
The absolute pinnacle of imaginative cultivation.
Yes. Story. Always story.
Why is story the ultimate tool? I mean, we read books and watch movies all the time.
Because story is the literal operating system of the imaginative faculty.
Operating system.
Yes. It works precisely by making the not present real. When you hear a powerful narrative, you are transported into a cognitive simulation.
Okay.
Think of it like a flight simulator for the human mind.
A flight simulator, wow.
You inhabit the protagonist, you face their obstacles, you feel their failures, and you experience their transformation safely.
Without actual risks.
Right, and it's not just an intellectual exercise. Your brain waves literally sync up with the narrative structure.
The text argues that the stories that have survived for millennia, the myths, the epics, they are not entertainment.
No, they're a transmission.
Transmission. They carry the encoded patterns of what is humanly possible.
They act as a calibration tool. When your imaginative faculty is impaired, engaging with a profound story gives that faculty a workout.
Like physical therapy for the imagination.
Exactly. It recognizes itself in the arc of the narrative, and that is how the machinery reactivates. You practice using your imaginative software by rendering someone else's story.
And that prepares you to finally render your own.
Precisely.
So what does this all mean?
Is the big question.
The climax of this entire source material points to one specific action.
Yeah.
The way out of the forgetting, the way to reverse the metaphysical amputation, is reclaiming your own story.
Reclaiming it completely.
Not the highly edited, polite, acceptable version you tell at dinner parties to seem practical and grounded.
Right.
The full, wild version with all its original longing and its absolute refusal to be small.
By reclaiming the narrative of your own life, you reclaim the faculty that generated it in the first place. You rebuild the architecture of the self.
And once that imaginative faculty is back online, once the rendering engine is running,
The memories that were forgotten because they couldn't be imagined suddenly become imaginable again.
and they return.
They return.
Yeah.
Not as dusty relics of the past pulled from a filing cabinet,
Right.
but as a living presence in the now. They arrive into a self that is finally expansive enough to hold them.
True memory requires imagination. You simply cannot have one without the other.
You can't.
And true maturity isn't about crushing your desires into a tight little box of pragmatism. True maturity is maintaining your identity as a creative entity.
Capable of generating what could exist.
Right, not just reacting to what already does. If you've been feeling like you've forgotten who you used to be, remember that the raw data is still there on the hard drive.
It's all still there.
You just need to reboot the software. You just need to cultivate a small tolerance for imagination.
This raises an important question, though. And it's a thought I want to leave you with today. We discussed how being genuinely imagined by someone else, having another person see and validate your full possibility, can rescue your suppressed imagination.
Right, the co-regulation.
Yes. We act as mirrors for one another's potential. If a single moment of true recognition holds that much neurological and psychological power, whose possibilities are you actively shutting down or powerfully unlocking by the way you choose to see the people in your life today?
Wow. Are you being a force of metaphysical amputation or a force of resonance for the people around you?
It was a heavy thought.
It completely changes how we think about memory, about our environments, and about our own hidden potential. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today. Keep reaching for what is possible. Stay wildly unimaginative about your limits. And remember, the files aren't gone. You just need to turn the rendering engine back on. We'll catch you next time.